Hi, folks, with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel. And thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the fitness standards and all the screaming and crying and hand wringing over the high bar fitness standards that Defense Secretary, or I think it's called Secretary of War now, Secretary Pete Hegseth has put in place in the United States military. You've got to have a high standard of fitness, and everyone has to meet that standard. Now, I don't know why there's so much hand wringing and screaming and crying. The military is meant to be an efficient fighting force that can beat the enemy on the other side of the line. So, wouldn't you want the best, the fittest, most capable soldiers, frontline soldiers in particular, but also people further back? Wouldn't you want the fittest people to be out there on the front line? I certainly would, and I can't see what the problem is. Why the entire Western world, obviously under the globalist cabal and directions, decided to say, well, we want lots of women and lesbians and gays and people that would take 5 million years to do the 100 meters, and that's why do we want that? Because there's no point. Now there is a difference between, say, a 60-year-old person who's working in the office full time and someone who's on 20 years old and on the front line. That's different, and I think the standards of fitness there should be different. So if they've got the high bar standard for the front line 20-year-old, and I don't see why that fitness standard should apply to the back office 60-year-old. Should there be a fitness standard? Absolutely, no question. Should the fitness standard be the same? I don't know. I haven't drilled down into this in a big way, but my understanding is, certainly from what I've seen of Secretary Hegseth and the statements he's made, is that everyone has to meet the same high bar. And I kind of struggle to see how that's really going to work. And that, if that's the case, the oldest person you're ever going to have in the armed forces, whether it be in the office or not, is probably going to be late 30s. If they're going to, and even then, it's going to be the super fit sort of people over the age of 30 that can meet that high bar. Anyway, I'm sure that'll sort itself out. But why the screaming and the crying? Now the feminists have come out and said, well, we don't know what you're talking about, this high bar. The women who are in the armed services already meet this high bar. So there's nothing to talk about here. It's always been a high bar. We've met it. Now, I've gone to quite a few military exhibitions and military gatherings all around in Australia and elsewhere. And I can attest, I can absolutely vouch that the vast majority of women who attend the vast majority, there are one or two exceptions, but the vast majority wouldn't pass a basic fitness test for anything, a basic high school fitness test. They wouldn't get through. Doing martial arts, I have to stay pretty fit and do the best I can. But I'm getting older. I'm in my 60s now, and trying to meet the even a sort of a regional martial arts tournament, you kind of have to show that you're fit enough to go in there. And even that, I'm now finding it at my age a real struggle to meet that standard. But I noticed they for that they employ different standards. So there's one standard for men and another standard for women. So maybe halfway through the fitness, the fitness thing that you've got to go through, maybe halfway through, pretty much every woman has dropped out. There may be one, possibly two, that might still be in it for a bit longer, but pretty much at the halfway mark, every woman has dropped out. And this is hardly rigorous. This is nothing like what the Marines or the frontline troops have to go through. Specialist troops in particular, commandos, all that sort of thing, the SAS and whatnot. There's no way I could meet that fitness standard, even though I'm a pretty fit guy. But none of the women could, and it's not a rigorous one in that. So I was out looking at the last. There was this military sort of general expo some months ago that I went to, And I was aghast at how many are super unfit, not just a little bit unfit. Maybe they could do the 100 meters in 15 seconds or something like that. But I am talking seriously unfit women, particularly in the Navy. Interesting. I don't know why the unfit women are overrepresented there, but they are. And looking around at these women, there was a couple of women who were, seriously fit, and probably in their early to mid 30s, I would guess, maybe a bit younger, but around that age group. Lots of tattoos and so on, rather feral. There's a certain coarseness to them. But anyway, there were hardly any. And I've been to the Army and other Air Force and so on, and there's a very small number of women who are fit. Now, I've dated a lot of, over the years, I've dated a lot of fit women who are very sporty, and they're doing a hard time in the gym, and they're very fit and very athletic. And I dated a chick who was teaching unarmed combat for women in the Air Force, and this sort of thing. So I'm sort of used to this, and I've got a fairly decent appreciation of the type of fitness you get from these, that you need to do these sorts of things. But the standards are dropped just to sort of address the issue. But the standards are already the same for everybody. No, they're not. If you're going to include lots of women and unfit people, you've got to lower the standard, like really lower it, if you're going to get some sort of equity, social equity, Marxist type outcome. And that goes the same for anything, whether it's rigorous examinations in school or college. Very few women actually make the grade. The only way to get equity, the only way, is to lower standards, and this is what the armed forces all over the world were doing, on the Western world at least. They don't seem to be doing that in China or Russia, but anyway. Now, I do understand that warfare is changing from sort of kind of boots on the ground, thrusting bayonets, and it's moving away from that to far more technical. It's going to be cyber warfare, drones and remote controlled drones, all this sort of thing. So I do appreciate that is changing there. Nonetheless, if you're going to have boots on the ground, and that'll have a role no matter what happens. Now, whether it has a decisive, huge role, whether it has a pivotal role, or whether it has a lesser role, doesn't matter. Boots on the ground is still going to be part of the gig. And so you want the fittest, most capable people to do that. If you look in say, martial arts, for example, you look at two people that are technically equally skilled, or more or less equally skilled, or even if the unfit person is better skilled from a technical point of view, the fitter guy is with rare exceptions still going to win, unless they're a complete beginner or something. But they're still going to win. They've got more gas in the tank. They can last longer. Their movements are quicker. Their strength is greater, and so these are all factors that obviously a major play a huge role in the outcome of winning and losing. And the same goes in the battlefield. If you've got someone who's sort of can't climb up onto the tank or the truck to get inside, or I'm too tired, my little bubby backies hurts, this sort of thing, then they can't do it. They won't be effective, and they'll be next to useless. But also because they're around other people who are capable, they're going to let those people down. So the good people, the capable people, the fit people, they're going to get killed, in combat action, because there are too many low quality people. This is in terms of fitness and so on. Low quality people in that team, or in that unit, or in that platoon, or whatever it might be. So, is Secretary Hegseth, eminently justified? Is it eminently sensible or reasonable to have a high bar of fitness? Of course it is. The byproduct of that, though, will be that hardly any women make the grade, and the soldiers will be overwhelmingly white, and straight white males will be the overwhelming cohort, which is something that particularly the globalists want to break up, because more than anything, they see the police and the military as being globalist protectors and furtherers of the globalist program. So they want to use the police and the military against the straight white males, and to do that they have to fill it up with gays and lesbians and black lesbians and so on. So I think that's clearly what the globalists are wanting, to transform the police and the military. In fact, in the United Kingdom, the police were already staunchly anti-straight white male or white generally. So it's already being accomplished in various parts of the world, Germany too. Coming now to the Secretary Hegseth's delivery, you'd hardly call Pete Hegseth urbane. There's a certain I don't know, there's a certain vulgarity and coarseness and commonness in his manner. So he's clearly not a political Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War. He's been a captain, as my understanding goes. He's been a captain. He's been on the front line. He's been through this thing where people are shooting at him, and the other guys are shooting at him. So I mean, the guy knows his business on the ground. Would you call him an elegant, urbane, someone who can sit comfortably around the stuffed shirts of Washington? Well, probably not. But the armchair generals like that idiot Mark Milley, that pathetic little flunky Mark Milley, you'd say, well, in terms of creating an efficient fighting force that is fit and fit for purpose, not just physically fit, but fit for purpose, then Secretary Hegseth is going to be miles in front of those guys with just little globalist stooges and flunkies who, again, their mission was to turn the military into a weapon to be used against the domestic population. And Secretary Hegseth is clearly turning the military into, with my full support, by the way, turning the military into a unit of, defending the United States, but also able to project power, decisive power, anywhere around the world where it's needed, whether that's defending the United States directly, or defending American interests, or even defending the interests of national identities rather than globalist nonsense. So, but looking at what Secretary Hegseth's proposing or started to do, then it's the best thing could ever have happened. And will that mean that there'll be very few women in the military and anywhere near to the front line or in direct support logistics of the front line? Well, there'll be hardly any there, and that's fine too. But as the Secretary said, if any woman who meets the standard is welcome, and why not? And this should be, this merit standard should apply for everything. And it used to. There was a time when it was in the West. And look how rich and powerful and well-governed and well-managed the West was then, with merit for getting into university. The best and the brightest university, the fittest, most capable go into the military, and so on and so forth. Now, at times, it stands, especially when you're looking at quantity over quality, at times standards do have to be dropped. Like, for example, taking conscripting people into the military, or even taking volunteers into the military during the Vietnam War. They needed a lot of soldiers. Not many people really wanted to go, so there weren't folks charging into the recruiting station, so they had to go to conscription, which is very unpopular. But that meant that some of the people who were conscripted turned up, and you go, holy crap, this guy isn't going to make it. So the basic training of, I think it was 13 weeks or 16 weeks or something like that, the dropout rate was fairly high, and quite a few people were being rejected when they fronted to the recruiting station as part of conscription. But they did lower the standard. They had to take people who ordinarily they wouldn't. So there are times in war when the quantity of soldiers you need means you have to drop the standard. They're not all going to meet the elite standard. But I don't know if mass warfare is ever going to come here. Maybe it will, but I doubt it will. I think it's going to be smaller, very capable, super well trained, super fit, very well equipped, elite fighting forces that are going to play the role in future warfare. And from what I can tell, at least Secretary Hegseth is going down that path, and I think it's the right path to go down. You've been with Tasslers today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.